The Cluttered Kingdom.
Tommy Thornberry had the wildest imagination in all of Maplewood. At least that's what he told himself. He could turn a pile of pillows into a fortress, a laundry basket into a pirate ship, and an old cardboard box into a rocket soaring through the stars. But Tommy had one small problem. He was a terrible cleaner.
"Tommy, your room is a disaster,"
his mum called from downstairs.
"It looks like a tornado had a party in there."
Tommy looked around his room. It wasn't that bad. Sure, there were piles of toys scattered across the floor, stacks of books leaning like wobbly towers, and enough clothes on the ground to start his own clothing store. But disaster was such a strong word. He sighed and flopped onto his bed.
"Clean your room before dinner or no dessert,"
his mum added. Tommy groaned. Cleaning was so boring. His eyes drifted to the pile of toy knights and dragons by his closet. What if, instead of cleaning, he went on an adventure? He closed his eyes for just a moment, letting his imagination take over. Suddenly, a low rumble shook the room. His bed trembled beneath him. The floor quaked. The mountains of books swayed dangerously, and his clothes piles began shifting like restless creatures. When Tommy opened his eyes, he wasn't in his room anymore. He stood in the middle of a vast and wild land. The ground was uneven, covered in jagged hills of discarded toys, slippery slopes of crumpled clothes, and treacherous valleys of broken crayons and marbles. The air smelled faintly of old socks. "Whoa," Tommy whispered. "Where am I?" He spun around, and his eyes widened in shock. Behind him, his bed had transformed into a massive stone archway, pulsing with a glowing blue light. A portal, he realized. My messy room. It turned into another world. He took a cautious step forward, his foot sinking into a pile of stuffed animals. They growled and rustled, making him yelp and stumble backward. Then, a deep voice rumbled from the distance.
"Who dares enter the Cluttered Kingdom?"
Tommy gulped. He turned slowly and gasped. Before him stood a towering creature made entirely of lost socks. Its body wobbled, its arms wiggled, and its eyes glowed like buttons. "I am Sir Tommy of Thornberry," Tommy declared bravely. "I have come, by accident." The sock monster cackled.
"Then you shall never escape. No one leaves the Cluttered Kingdom. The more mess there is, the stronger I become."
Tommy's heart pounded. He tried to step backward, but his foot caught on something, a rolling toy car. He toppled over and slid down a slope of slippery comic books, landing in a heap of tangled shoelaces. "Ah!" he shouted, struggling to free himself. The more he wiggled, the more tangled he became. From the shadows, tiny creatures emerged. They were made of broken crayons, their heads stubby and colourful, their arms made of snapped pencils. They chattered in tiny voices and scurried toward him. "New prisoner!" they squeaked. "Tie him up! Make him one of us!" Tommy's panic grew. He had to think fast. He spotted an old jump rope nearby and grabbed it. With one swift motion, he tossed it over a nearby clothesline, pulling himself free just in time. He dashed forward, dodging a mountain of toppled board games and leaping over a canyon filled with mismatched socks. The sock monster roared behind him, sending a tidal wave of dirty laundry in his direction. Tommy sprinted, his mind racing. Think, how do I get out of here? Then it hit him. This world was made from my messy room. If the mess gave the sock monster power, then cleaning up must weaken him. Determined, Tommy grabbed a nearby basket and began scooping up socks, tossing them inside. The sock monster let out a furious shriek.
"No, stop that."
Tommy grinned. He was onto something. He stacked the books into neat piles, shoved the toys into their bins, and folded the clothes. With each bit of cleaning, the kingdom began to change. The jagged hills smoothed into flat ground, The towering sock piles shrank, and the air smelled fresher. The sock monster grew smaller and smaller until... Pop! It vanished in a puff of lint and dust. The entire world trembled, and the glowing portal behind him pulsed brighter and brighter. Tommy took one last look at the vanishing Cluttered Kingdom before leaping through the archway. Whoosh! He tumbled onto his bedroom floor. His heart pounded. He was back! Tommy jumped up and looked around. His room was still a mess, but not for long. Without wasting a second, he started cleaning, tossing clothes into the hamper, putting books on the shelf, and sorting his toys. He worked faster than he ever had before. By the time his mum peeked in, the room was spotless.
She raised an eyebrow. Wow, Tommy, I didn't think you'd actually do it.
Tommy grinned. I had some motivation. His mum smiled.
Well, dinner's ready, and since your room is clean, you can have extra dessert.
As Tommy followed her downstairs, he glanced back at his now tidy room. For the first time ever, he felt relieved to see it clean. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he spotted something. A faint golden shimmer flickering near his bookshelf before disappearing. A deep chuckle echoed through the air, sending a shiver down Tommy's spine. It was a voice he had never heard before, smooth, calculating, and amused.
"Well done, young Thornberry," the voice whispered, "but this is only the beginning."
Tommy's breath caught. He turned sharply, but there was nothing there. The golden shimmer faded, leaving only the quiet hum of his bedroom. Somewhere, in the unseen corners of his world, something watched with interest. Tommy had unknowingly foiled one of his many schemes, but there would be more. His heart raced. Was there something behind it all? One thing was certain. He never wanted to visit the Cluttered Kingdom again.